The global population touched 8 billion recently. Population growth would irreversibly impact world's environment and natural resource base, and would also limit the next generation's entitlement and progress. Although continuous efforts are already being made to create awareness about achieving a sustainable human population, there's still a long way to go to preserve nature and improve lives. The India Today Group's campaign Viram Agenda Sustainability, in partnership with the Mobius Foundation, is one such step in the right direction. It's a call for collective effort and commitment by all sections of society to exercise effective measures for population stabilization and sustainability. The event was aimed at creating awareness and starting conversations on possible remedial measures for population stabilization, and was attended by environmentalists, academics, policymakers, and NGOs actively working in this area.
Mr. Berman, congratulations on this campaign, because I think, as I mentioned, it's a thought-provoking issue. It affects each one of us in very different ways. With this kind of a campaign like Agenda Sustainability, how do you see this making an impact? Because this entire event, we're going to be focusing on remedial measures that you and I can deal with.
The major reason for us to find ourselves in this is the overpopulation. Our population was 35 crores at the time of independence. It's now 140 crores. So it's more than 4 times of whatever it was at the time of independence. The area has not increased, the water has not increased. In fact, we have cut down forests for human habitation. So this is the most important subject for people to be made aware of.
Could you also, Mr. Berman, throw some light for our audience on the initiatives that the Mobius Foundation has taken in the field, particularly of population stabilization?
As an organization, we are focused on sustainability. Now, we cannot look at everything. So we are looking at 2 things. We're looking at population stabilization, and we're looking at education. And what are the steps that we have taken? The first step that we've took was called Project Akar. That means the shape of the families that are living in the planet. Not only in the planet, but first of all in India. So what we did was first see what is called the TFR rate. TFR rate is the total fertility rate, which denotes where the maximum amount of children are being born. And over 2.1 means it is too much and the population will grow. So anything over 3.0, there are over 140 districts in India which have a TFR rate of more than 3. So we are going to go to 140 districts. We are going to we've gone with 2 districts to first experiment to see what is the effect of our Project Akar. And then we will go to 100 districts, to all the places where the TFR rate is high.
It's truly, truly commendable, sir, what your foundation is doing. And I think you've touched upon some very crucial issues about education being the need of the hour, coupled with also protecting our natural resources. Thank you very much, Mr. Berman, for joining me here on the stage and educating us really about what needs to be done going forward.
Thank you. I hope I've made an impact.
Mr. Mishra, if I could begin with you. I think largely, very often when we talk about population growth, or for that matter, any issue, it's always, what is the government doing about it? Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken about the issue, and even in his Independence Day speech mentioned the issue of population control, how this is a concern and awareness, education is the need of the hour. But what's the forward plan also, sir? Because the government has recognized that this is a challenge, not just for the present generation, but also for the future generation.
See, I mean, this oft-quoted thing that population is a problem, I am not very convinced with that. Explosion of population is a problem. And anything that can be done to stabilize population must be done. What is it that government is doing? Today, nobody thought that by 2020, 2021, we'll be reaching replacement levels in India. The replacement levels is defined as 2.1 of the TFR. Today the TFR is 2. So you've reached replacement levels, which means you are at a stable base. Now, how did this happen? First, let us get into the psyche of the people where more and more children are coming from. First, they see it as additional hand for their livelihood. Therefore, if you are able to solve the question of unemployment, livelihood, etc., those social factors, it's a big help. Second, more and more children are born because the mother and the father are not sure whether the child who has been born is going to survive or not. And this has been a long story in India. But today, fortunately, our infant mortality is extremely controllable. We've done extremely well in that. So there is an assurance to the parents that yes, your child will live, and that has helped in bringing down the pressure of population. The third segment, which is being addressed very vigorously, is the segment of adolescents. In particular, I would like to talk about the adolescent girls. Their well-being, because they are the future mothers. Their empowerment is the key to stabilization of population. So adolescent girls need to be addressed. And the third critical thing is educating girls. I would say, if you can make sure that every girl goes to class 12th, more than half your work is done. What was needed was a change in the strategy. And the change strategy is, let the woman take the decision. And the moment that happened in many of the villages, with slight increase in education, population started falling and stabilizing.
Mr. Srinivas Goli, if I can bring you in also at this point. Let's talk about some of the numbers, the demographics right now. The Asian continent is more prone to growth in population, right? Almost 60% of the world's population resides in Asia. Why do you think that is? What are the factors that are really contributing to the rise in numbers, particularly in Asia and not so much in other continents?
Actually, you're looking at the current contribution of Asia's population, that's 59%. But if you just go back and read the numbers from 1950, what is the Asia's contribution? It is 55%. So now it is 59%. So in last 70 years, we just have contributed just 4-5% is more than what it used to be. That means we have experienced an accelerating decline compared to what it was in the Europe, in the developed countries. For example, if you take many developed countries, European, especially the Western European countries, it took 225 for France, 215 for UK, and 140 years for US to reach from the onset of fertility transition to reaching the replacement level fertility. China has completed it in 29 years. India completed it in 46 years. Our onset of fertility transition was in 1975, and now we have completed it in 2022. That means we just completed it in 46 years. That's an incredible achievement. So the developed world cannot blame the Asia for its now current population contribution, because we have done much more than what we have to.
Mr. Anand Sinha, if I can bring you in on this. You're someone who's worked very closely with the private sector in delivery of health services. A number of issues also that were raised already by Mr. Mishra and also Mr. Srinivas Goli is about infant mortality. Do you think steps are being taken to better that, and thereby you're seeing an impact really on the ground also with regards to family planning?
The fears have always been that if we go chasing numbers, we will sacrifice the choices, the autonomy, the decision-making of people, and we will force family planning on those who have big families, on those who don't have the education, on those who don't have the means to decide, right? And that concern is still very much alive today. The family planning programs that we've managed to deliver in the last 10 to 15 years, however, have been exemplary family planning programs, and India is being recognized for that. The results speak for themselves very clearly. Because if the solution to our climate problem lay in addressing our population problem, India should have been solving the problem already. It's not. Our climate problem remains, it's in our faces, it's blatant. And if
So
we think
it's not interconnected is what you're
it is
saying.
connected, but and this is the problem I keep on saying, is that the reason to drive a family planning program cannot be climate. The reason to drive a family planning program is to offer choices to couples, enabling them to take the decisions that they think are for their families. They will eventually take the decisions. A family planning program cannot be done to say that there is a right population for India. I don't know what that right number is. The study of population is called population dynamics because it's a dynamic field. But what I'm coming back to is that to drive family planning programs, to say that we're going to control and have a magic number of people in our country is the wrong basis to drive a family planning program. A family planning program, and I'm glad to see that again, the Mobius Foundation is doing a fantastic job. Education, making people aware of their choices, providing respectful care. These are the basis for driving a family planning program. It will lead to a population that declines. We're seeing those results. When you provide high quality care that is respectful, that is provided with dignity, when people are sure that their children are going to survive, when there's good healthcare services offered, why will people have 10 children? Why will people have 5 children? India used to have a total fertility rate of 5.9 about 40, 50 years ago. There are only 5 states which have a TFR above 2.1 now.
Let me also bring in Mr. Praveen Garg, because there was a point made by Mr. Anand Sinha about population dynamics. Do you think that there's a need to improvise our population policy in the country? And do you think also, just as a follow-up, sir, how will citizens react if you actually put in improvised population policies?
If you see the evolution of the family planning program over the last 3 decades, it was a linear approach when we started in the field. It was just the family planning program. Now it is family welfare. There's a cafeteria approach to the whole thing, and there is a target-free approach which is being followed by the government, and you can see the results. But the point is that the government is going to improvise, and I also feel that the technology is going to play a major role. You see, we are going to track the reproductive age groups by technology, and even the supply of the the different contraceptives can be assisted by the technology. So that's going to be the major game changer, and that may result in stabilizing population much faster. You see, we are already overpopulated. We have to see the land. We are just 1.4% of the total land, and we are carrying 14% of the population. It's a strain on our natural resources, and which may result in number of things. And poverty is a classic example. If you see the average per capita income of this country in US dollar terms, is just $2,000 US. Government has done a great job, but unless people become part of that government effort, they volunteer for that, NGOs become part of that, we won't have the results. It might be too late.
Mr. Srinivas Gole, there is a number that's often stated when you talk about population figures, that in 2050, India's population is projected to be 1.69 billion. Do you think that's a correct representation of facts? Do you think that's keeping in mind all of the issues, the steps that are currently being taken?
Yeah, these are based on UN population prospects. Yeah, these based on projections that we do on using several parameters. To the large extent, if you see how we can say that a projection can be true. Suppose if you see from the previous trends that what UN population prospects has projected and what it is now, so there we don't see much deviations, minor deviations, not that deviation. So therefore what I can say is that there might be a slight deviation, but not more or less it will be the same figure.
Mr. Praveen Garg, what are the ways do you think really, in your experience, we can actually deaccelerate or flatten that growth trajectory, and what will be the implications of that?
You see, it is the awareness among the people, and it's a leadership which can flatten the curve, which can even bend the curve, and before 2050 we may be flattening the curve or bending the curve. Now the leadership is generally with the political leadership I'm talking about, or the administrative leadership, which is a bureaucracy. So how to inspire people, how to, how to make them realize that the growth which is happening is not required, or they need to have smaller families. Second thing which I feel is, unless, there are 3 E's which I keep talking about. One is education. So if we have education and good quality education, if you see these Bimaru states, the quality of education in these Bimaru states, in the government schools, is relatively poor compared to southern states. So education is one of the key factors. Second is the empowerment of women, whether education or getting some participating in the labor force. So these are the things which needs to be done. Third is the employment, general employment, because if the employment is provided to the common man and they are not unemployed, then it makes them think of following the family planning methods.
What you also see, we've spoken about this unfortunately for years, and it's still a prevalent issue, is that in some cases, families tend to have babies, children, till they have a male child. And this is very prevalent still in rural parts of the country.
I was once asked this by a bunch of young people. The national program for the girl child has this, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao slogan. And they asked me, they said, why? Right? Why? And then what they said is that the problem is that every time I ask someone why, the answer that I get is from most people, educated people, is that there aren't enough girls. Right? Why? Who will our men marry? So the problem that we're solving for by Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao is a pipeline of brides for men. That's what we think as middle-class educated people still. So if that's the value of girls, even within our setting, right, we're not addressing this, right? They're still a resource. Women are a resource for wives, for childbearing, for housekeeping, for cooking, that I cannot avail of. Where will men go if there aren't enough women? So I need to save the girl child, right? That in itself is hugely flawed. Until we understand the value of women as equal, right, we're not going to get over it. And so there is a deep, deep change that's needed. This issue of saying, whether it's prenatal, postnatal, etc., the mindset changes that need to happen, and the things that drive these programs have to have a very root cause sort of change. I remember that was a very, important interaction for me, because she kept on challenging me, saying, why, right? And I realized that it was important to answer the question why for everyone, because we get onto these slogans and we think we're doing the right thing, and actually we're not. We're doing the wrong thing.
That's a very, very interesting point that you've made. And I think when you talk about these kind of issues, particularly in the rural parts of the country, it's so ingrained in people's mind. I'd like to take the time out to thank all of you, Mr. Mishra, Mr. Anand Sinha, Mr. Praveen Garg, and Mr. Srinivas Goli for joining us here on this platform. Warm round of applause, please, for all of our panelists for taking the time out this evening. We largely had discussions, of course, about sustainable development, about population, Zakir. But we'd like to ask you also, what is your experience with this issue, and what do you believe, to your basic general knowledge, of how do we change this narrative around population and how do we educate people out there?
मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि झूठ पकड़ में आता है जब भी हम इस तरह की बात करते हैं तो जैसे कि इंडिया में अगर कोई बोले कि उसको क्लस्ट्रोफोबिया है तो मुझे पता चल जाता है कि आदमी झूठ बोल रहा है क्योंकि अपने इतनी भीड़ है कि अलाउड ही नहीं है किसी को क्लस्ट्रोफोबिया फील हो बेचारे को, वो तो ट्रेन में जा ही नहीं पाएगा कभी। तो कुछ चीज़ें जो हमारे रीजनल स्पेसिफिक हैं, मुझे 2 चीज़ें जो लगती हैं जो मेरा सैम्पल साइज़, क्योंकि एज एन आर्टिस्ट आप बहुत ट्रैवल करते हो, बहुत लोगों से मिलते हो, और मेरी खुशकिस्मती ये रही है कि मैं बहुत यंग एज से सितार बजाता था मैं, और मैं अपने दादा उस्ताद मोहद्दीन खां साहब के साथ बहुत घूमा हूँ, फिरा हूँ, मैंने जगहें देखी हैं, शायद ही कोई शहर इस देश का ऐसा कोई ज़िला होगा जहाँ नहीं गया हुआ मैं। तो जो बात मुझे समझ में आई है पॉपुलेशन को लेकर कि एजुकेशन और गरीबी, मेरे ख्याल से इन 2 चीज़ों का बड़ा कोरिलेशन है पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ में सबसे ज़्यादा। क्योंकि क्या होता है कि गरीबी का इसलिए मुझे ऐसा लगता है क्योंकि जब आप ह्यूमन रिसोर्स को एज हेल्पिंग हैंड जब देखने लग जाते हैं तब आप कोशिश करते हैं कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा आपके आल हो, आपके बच्चे हों, क्योंकि क्या है कि वो आपको ऐसा लगता है कि शायद ये बड़े होके शायद हमारे घर की माली हालत ठीक करेंगे। अनदर थिंग इज पॉवर्टी एक चीज़ है और दूसरा अनएजुकेशन, कि जब आपको मालूमात ही नहीं है कि बेहतर ज़िंदगी क्या हो सकती है, कम बच्चों में कैसे रहा जा सकता है। एक ख़ानदानी रीत भी चली आ रही है आपकी, आपके दादा लोग 7 भाई थे, आपके पापा लोग 9 भाई हैं, तो आप 4 बच्चे करके क्या करोगे?
तो आई ऑल्सो वांटेड टू आस्क यू जाकिर कि आपके एक्सपीरियंस से क्या स्टीरियोटाइप्स है विच ऑल्सो प्रोपोगेट द मेल चाइल्ड मोर, क्योंकि जेंडर रेशियो इज ऑल्सो अ बिग प्रॉब्लम हियर इन द कंट्री।
आई थिंक स्टीरियोटाइप तो वही है, जैसे कि बड़ी सारी कहावतें हैं हमारे यहाँ पे, और वो इसलिए भी था कि वंश आगे बढ़ेगा, बाप का नाम तो बेटा ही आगे बढ़ाता है, इस तरह की बातें जो मेरे ख्याल से अब इस दौर में जैसे जैसे हम जब छोटे थे तब जिस तरह से हम देख रहे थे उसका मूवमेंट तो हुआ है, देर इज सर्टन ग्रोथ टू इट, कि जिनके जैसे कि हमारे कुछ दोस्त हैं जिनकी एक एक बेटियां ही हैं और दे आर फाइन विद इट। पहले वो लोग फाइन नहीं थे, आसपास के लोगों को भी थोड़ी सी शर्मिंदगी होने लगी अब ये बात बोलने में, पर पहले जैसे एक कहावत है वो सब बेटों के बारे में है ना, क्योंकि मैं राजस्थान की पृष्ठभूमि से आता हूँ, मेरे 4 फादर जो हैं वो सीकर के एक जिले से आते हैं, तो बड़ी कहावत है उस पहले कि पूत कपूत तो क्यों धन सींचे।
बिल्कुल ठीक।
कि पूत कपूत तो क्यों धन सींचे, पूत सपूत तो क्यों धन सींचे, कि अगर आपका बेटा जो है वो खराब है तो आप क्यों सेविंग कर रहे हो, अगर आपका बेटा अच्छा निकलेगा तो फिर आप क्यों सेविंग कर रहे हो। ठीक है, इस तरह की बातें, तो आपको लगता है कि बेटा ये जो सेविंग बचाएगा बर्बाद करेगा, बेसिकली अंकल को चिल करना है। ठीक है दोनों सिनारियों में नहीं कमाना है कुछ भी, सेविंग नहीं करनी, क्योंकि बेटा है वो देखेगा ही। तो एक तो वो था मेरे ख्याल से कल्चरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट है उसका थोड़ा बहुत, ऊपर से मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि वॉर प्रोन, बहुत सारे वॉर हमने देखे और पूरा दुनिया ही वॉर प्रोन था। ठीक है, एक टाइम पे तो एक वो है कि आदमी लड़ने को लगता है, तो इसलिए भी जितने ज़्यादा आदमी उतना बढ़ गया मेरे ख्याल से। वो अब धीरे धीरे क्योंकि रिलेटिवली हम पीस टाइम्स में चल रहे हैं तो थोड़ा सा बेहतर हो रहा है मेरे ख्याल से।
Viram Agenda Sustainability is the beginning of a year-long mission to achieve a sustainable human population.